This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Yes, I hope you will forgive me, but I was delayed at the printer's. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Peter Stockman, bowing a little distantly. Good evening. You've come on business, no doubt? Hofstad. Partly. It's about an article for the paper. Peter Stockman. So I imagined. I hear my brother's become a prolific contributor to the People's Messenger. Hofstad. Yes, he's good enough to write in the People's Messenger when he has any home truth to tell. Mrs. Stockman to Hofstad. But won't you? Points to the dining room. Peter Stockman. Quite so, quite so. I don't blame him in the least, as a writer, for addressing himself to the quarters where he will find the readiest sympathy. And besides that, I personally have no reason to bear any ill will to your paper, Mr. Hofstad. Hofstad. I quite agree with you. Peter Stockman. Taking one thing with another, there is an excellent spirit of toleration in the town, an admirable municipal spirit, and it all springs from the fact of our having a great common interest to unite us, an interest that is in an equally high degree the concern of every right-minded citizen. Hofstad. The baths, yes. Peter Stockman. Exactly. Our fine new handsome baths. Mark my words, Mr. Hofstad. The baths will become the focus of our municipal life. Not a doubt of it. Mrs. Stockman. That is just what Thomas says. Peter Stockman. Think how extraordinarily the place has developed within the last year or two. Money has been flowing in, and there is some life and some business doing in the town. Houses and landed property are rising in value every day. Hofstad. And unemployment is diminishing. Peter Stockman. Yes, that is another thing. The burden of the poor rates has been lightened to the great relief of the property classes, and that relief will be even greater if only we get a really good summer this year and lots of visitors, plenty of invalids who will make the baths talked about. Hofstad. And there is a good prospect of that, I hear. Peter Stockman. It looks very promising. Enquiries about apartments and that sort of thing are reaching us every day. Hofstad. Well, the doctor's article will come in very suitably. Peter Stockman. Has he been writing something just lately? Hofstad. This is something he wrote in the winter. A recommendation of the baths. An account of the excellent sanitary conditions here. But I held the article over temporarily. Peter Stockman. Ah? Some little difficulty about it, I suppose? Hofstad. No, not at all. I thought it would be better to wait till the spring, because it is just at this time that people begin to think seriously about their summer quarters. Peter Stockman. Quite right. You were perfectly right, Mr. Hofstad. Mrs. Stockman. Yes, Thomas is really indefatigable when it is a question of the baths. Peter Stockman. Well, remember he is the medical officer to the baths. Hofstad. Yes, and what is more, they owe their existence to him. Peter Stockman. To him? Indeed. It is true I've heard from time to time that some people are of that opinion. At the same time, I must say I imagined that I took a modest part in the enterprise. Mrs. Stockman. Yes, that is what Thomas is always saying. Hofstad. But who denies it, Mr. Stockman? You set the thing going and made a practical concern of it. We all know that. I only meant that the idea of it came first from the doctor. Peter Stockman. Oh, ideas, yes. My brother has had plenty of them in his time, unfortunately. But when it is a question of putting an idea into practical shape, you have to apply to a man of different metal, Mr. Hofstad. And I certainly should have thought that in this house at least. Mrs. Stockman. My dear Peter. Hofstad. How can you think that? Mrs. Stockman. Won't you go in and have something, Mr. Hofstad? My husband is sure to be back directly. Hofstad. Thank you. Perhaps just a morsel. Goes into the dining room. Peter Stockman, lowering his voice a little. It is a curious thing that these farmers' sons never seem to lose their want of tact. Mrs. Stockman. Surely it's not worth bothering about. Cannot you and Thomas share the credit as brothers? Peter Stockman. I should have thought so, but apparently some people are not satisfied with a share. Mrs. Stockman. What nonsense. You and Thomas get on so capitally together. Listens. There he is at last, I think. Goes out and opens the door leading to the hall. Dr. Stockman laughing and talking outside. Look here, here's another guest for you, Catherine. Isn't that jolly? Come in, Captain Horster. Hang your coat up on this peg. Ah, you don't wear an overcoat. Just think, Catherine, I met him in the street, and could hardly persuade him to come up. Captain Horster comes into the room.